Okay, let me get your name.
Tamala, Washington.
And you were her mother.
Yes, sir.
What would you say to the person responsible for this if they are listening? What message would you give them?
The message is, why would you bring a gun to a fast food restaurant? I mean, that was senseless and it was a coward move. I mean, you're here to order food. I mean, why you got guns? It don't make sense to me. I don't understand, why would you bring a gun to a fast food restaurant? It's not making sense.
In every home, behind every closed door, there's a story waiting to be uncovered. Welcome to Dark Whispers, where we dive deep into the hidden truths of domestic crime and the relationships that turn deadly. If you're drawn to real stories, powerful insights, and the shadows most people avoid, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and step into the whispers they never wanted you to hear.
She was standing at a drive-thru window, doing her job, when somebody decided that onion rings were worth killing over. Onion rings. Let that sit with you for a second. Not a robbery, not a beef that had been going on for years, not some deep personal grudge that had been building up for months. Onion rings, a food order, something so small, so meaningless, that most of us would have just rolled our eyes, asked for a manager, and kept it moving. But on that night, in that drive-thru lane, a 32-year-old woman lost her life because a customer could not let it go. And the worst part? Chauncia Meekins never even saw it coming. She was just at work. Let me tell you something. Chauncia Lachelle. Meekins was the kind of person that every workplace needs. She showed up. She did her shift. She stood at that drive-thru window night after night at the Steak and Shake in Spanish Lakes, St. Louis. And she did what she was paid to do. She was 32 years old, a grown woman with her whole life in front of her, earning her own money, minding her business, doing everything right. Like, that's the thing that keeps hitting different about this story. There was nothing Chauncia could have done to deserve what happened to her. She wasn't out in the streets. She wasn't in the middle of anything. She was at work, and her workplace became the last place she ever stood. Her family knew her. Her co-workers knew her. And the community that showed up for her vigil, they knew her too. Because Chauncia wasn't just an employee. She was somebody's daughter, somebody's baby. And when her father stood outside that same restaurant the day before her funeral, you could see on his face exactly how much she meant to him. We're going to come back to that moment, because that moment right there, it will stay with you. But first, let's talk about the night everything changed. It was a regular night, the kind of night where nothing is supposed to happen. Customers pulling up, placing orders, driving away. The routine that every fast food worker knows by heart. Chauncia was at the drive-thru window when a customer pulled up with an issue about their order. Specifically, onion rings. Period. That is what this whole thing started over. Now, anybody who has ever worked in food service knows that customer complaints happen every single day. People get upset about their orders. They want their money back. They want it remade. They want to speak to somebody. It's frustrating, sure, but it's part of the job. And most of the time, it ends there. This time, it did not end there. The situation at that window got heated fast. Words were exchanged. Tensions climbed. And then, the customer threw a drink at Chauncia. A drink, through the drive-thru window, at a woman who was just doing her job. Now at this point, most people would have been shaken. Most people would have stepped back, maybe called a manager, maybe closed that window and tried to collect themselves. Because having something thrown at you at work, that is already a violation. That alone should have been where it ended. But the customer at that window was not done. 20-year-old Jada Bell reached for a handgun, and she fired several rounds into that drive-thru window, into the space where Chantia was standing. And just like that, over a food order, a woman who had done nothing wrong was gone. A second woman was also wounded in the shooting. 2 people hit in a matter of seconds because of something that should have never gone past words. Make it make sense. Because I genuinely cannot. The night of April 8th at the Steak and Shake in Spanish Lakes, St. Louis County. That is the night the community lost Chauncia Meekins. She was shot and killed in the drive-thru. On the job, in the middle of her shift. Think about that for a moment. She clocked in that day like any other day. She put on her uniform, she took her position at that window, and she had no reason to believe she wouldn't clock back out and go home when it was over. But Jada Bell pulled up to that window with a complaint and a gun, and by the time it was over, Chauncia Meekins was dead. The rounds were fired from a handgun, multiple shots, through the drive-thru window, in a public restaurant, where other people were present, where another woman was also hit. This wasn't a dark alley. This wasn't some remote location in the middle of the night. This was a Steak and Shake, a place people go with their kids, a place families pull up to on a regular Tuesday night. And somebody brought a gun to that window and started shooting because they were unhappy with their food order. The people inside that restaurant, the co-workers who were there, the customers in that drive-thru line. Nobody expected to witness a murder that night. Nobody should have had to. When the shots stopped and the car pulled away, Chauncia Meekins, 32 years old, somebody's daughter, somebody's co-worker, somebody's friend, was gone. When word got out about what happened at that Steak and Shake, the community felt it immediately. This wasn't a story people could scroll past. A woman, shot and killed through a drive-thru window, at work, over food. That kind of news travels fast and it lands hard. St. Louis County Police were on it, and to their credit, they moved with an urgency that this case deserved. Detectives started pulling the threads together. Surveillance footage from the restaurant, witness accounts from people who were there that night, anyone who saw that car pull up to that window. Because here is the thing about a drive-thru. There are cameras everywhere. Every angle of that transaction is recorded. The order, the window, the lane, all of it. And when you pull up to a drive-thru window and fire a weapon, you are not as invisible as you might think you are. The investigation moved, and it moved quickly. Now, the family, they were in a different kind of pain during this time. Because while detectives were working the case, Chauncia's people were planning a funeral. They were picking out what she would wear. They were figuring out how to say goodbye to someone who should not have been gone yet. That kind of grief has no timeline. You cannot rush through it. And yet they had to keep getting up every single day and moving through it, not knowing yet whether anyone was going to be held accountable for what happened to their daughter. Anyways, the detectives came through. Weeks after the murder, St. Louis County prosecutors made an announcement. And that announcement changed everything for the Meakins family. Bell, 20 years old. That is the name St. Louis County prosecutors put forward when they announced charges in the murder of Chauncia Meekins. She was charged with 6 felonies. 6, including first-degree murder and armed criminal action. And she was being held on a $1 million cash-only bond. $1 million. Cash only, because the court understood exactly what kind of case this was. Now here is the moment I told you we would come back to. The day before Chauncia's funeral, her family gathered outside that same Steak and Shake, the place where she worked, the place where she was killed. They held a vigil right there in that parking lot, releasing balloons into the air for a woman who deserved so much more than what she got. And while they were standing there, grieving, holding each other up, trying to find some way to breathe through all of it, Jordan Burrell shared the news with the family. A suspect had been charged. Chauncia's father heard it in real time, right there, outside the restaurant, and the man broke down. He cried tears of joy. In the middle of his grief, in the middle of planning to bury his child the very next day, he heard that someone was being held accountable, and he wept. Not from sadness in that moment, from relief, from the feeling that maybe, just maybe, his daughter was not going to be forgotten, that her life was not going to go unanswered. Somebody who was there captured that moment. And if you ever needed to understand what justice means to a family, not in a courtroom, not in legal language, but in a real, human, raw way, that moment right there is it. Thank you, Jesus. I pray, honey. All day long, honey. That is what you heard from the family in that moment. Those words. That is a father releasing something he had been carrying since the night his daughter was taken from him. And Chauncia's mother. She had been to view her daughter's body before the funeral. She stood there and looked at her child, and she said something that has stayed with everyone who heard it. Seeing my daughter, as she's going to be laid to rest, she looked beautiful. She looked happy. Right now. I didn't know why. But now I know why she's happy and the crime has been solved. Oh, so now, think about what it takes to find peace in a moment like that. To look at your child in a casket and find something to hold on to. That mother found it. She chose to believe her daughter was at peace, and she chose to hold on to the fact that someone was being held responsible. The family also made their position clear when it came to what they wanted from the justice system. They were not calling for revenge. They wanted accountability. They wanted this case to set an example, because, as they put it, this kind of violence could happen anywhere, to anyone. At a convenience store, behind the potato chips, at a filling station, at a pump, anywhere. As a family and as a whole, we will be pushing for the government, but not for revenge to set an example. We need to stop this type of senseless violence. And they were right. They are right. Because Chauncia Meekins was not living recklessly. She was not in a dangerous situation of her own making. She was at work. She was doing what you and I do, showing up, putting in her hours, trying to build something, and it still was not enough to keep her safe. That is what makes this case so heavy. That is what makes people stop scrolling when they hear about it. Because there is no lesson here that Chantia failed to follow. There is no moment where you can say she should have done something differently. She did everything right, and she still didn't make it home. Jada Bell's case was moving through the legal process, with prosecutors firmly behind the charges. The community was watching, the family was watching, and they made clear they were not going anywhere until justice was fully served. Chauncia Meekins was 32 years old. She was at work, and she never came home. That is the sentence that this whole story keeps coming back to. Because no matter how many times you turn it over in your head, it does not get easier to sit with. A woman clocked into her shift and clocked out in a body bag because a customer at a drive-thru window decided that a disagreement over onion rings was worth reaching for a gun. And here is what the family said that will not leave me alone. They said this could have been anybody's child. At a convenience store, at a gas pump, at a drive-thru window. And they were not wrong, because Chauncia was not doing anything that any one of us has not done 1,000 times. She was working. She was showing up. She was being exactly who she was supposed to be in that moment. The people who loved her released balloons outside that restaurant. They stood in that parking lot, in their grief, and they chose to speak about accountability instead of anger. They chose to call for change instead of chaos. And that kind of grace, in the middle of that kind of loss, is something that deserves to be said out loud. Let me tell you something. When a community loses someone the way they lost Chauncia, the wound does not close quickly. People who worked in that building had to go back to that drive-thru window. Customers who pulled up to that lane had to keep living with the image of what happened there. And a father had to walk into a funeral the very next morning after finding out that the person accused of killing his daughter had finally been charged. That is not closure. That is the beginning of a very long road. And the Meakans family was walking it with their heads up. Jada Bell was 20 years old when she was charged with taking a life over a food order. 20 years old. And now she faces first-degree murder charges that could define the rest of her life. Moving on, because there is truly nothing more to say about a choice that's senseless, except that the consequences are real and they are permanent. Chauncia Meekins deserved to go home that night. She deserved to finish her shift, kick off her shoes, and rest. She deserved more years, more moments, more everything. And the fact that none of that happened because of onion rings is something this community is going to be carrying for a long time. Rest easy, Chauncia. You were seen, you were loved, and your name is not going to be forgotten.